everyone. We're welcoming today Iryana Mosina, who is someone that I met at Psycher. We met a few years ago. So someone that has a lot of experience with recreational settings and has done some research in this very underexplored area. But she will introduce herself in a bit more depth and go into the recreational versus intentional psychedelic substance use. Thank you very much, Iryana.
Thank you, Rini. Good to see you all. Hi. I think the area is very much under research in the academia, but it's very well researched in the field, right? So the way I framed the topic is recreational versus intentional psychedelic substance use, question mark. So this talk is going to be a mixture of different things, but also it's going to be an invitation to explore and to contemplate on how we speak about our experience and how we sort of form the narrative using language, right? And I want to start by exploring the word recreational. It has this powerful root, creation, right? And so recreation is also amplified creation in a way. But how do we use it in every day when we describe our experiences with psychedelics? And so this entire talk is based on two observations that I have made over and over again. And I know quite a few people here in the room, and those of you who know me also know that I know a lot of people just by the nature of my life and a lot of events and stuff. I end up speaking to people, and I'm really blessed to have these amazing acquaintances. And the way it normally goes is that we start speaking, and we get to know each other. And then like minute 3 in, it's like psychedelics. Okay. And I always am like, okay, what is it? But okay. And I really love exploring these topics. And so people go and say, but I only take them recreationally. And maybe you have said that too at some point in your life. I only take them recreationally. So what does it mean? English is not my first language. So I turned to the dictionary. And so the Cambridge Dictionary shows something that you will find across multiple dictionaries. I think it's super interesting. So recreational activity in that case is connected with ways of enjoying yourself when you're not working. I think it's super interesting. So this kind of duality of you can be working or you can be doing something else that is actually also part of that enjoyment can be too. And I think it's very interesting how language shows this conceptualization that we bring into and this division between either work or enjoyment. Yeah, it's just, you can really see it. And I really like that International Journal of Physiology, Nutrition, and Physical Education kind of gives, reiterates the role of recreation. So why do we need recreation? It's because when we work, we have mental fatigue. And so recreational activities give us this opportunity to kind of restore. Okay, fair enough. So we take away that recreational activity is done for enjoyment. But when we speak about drug use, again, there is this definition that is saying use for pleasure instead of medical purposes. And to me, it almost suggests like a false dichotomy, right? Because it's kind of like two categories, pleasure or medical purposes. And so if we were to speak about settings, so if we derive kind of from this recreation, what is a recreational setting about which we talk so much, that kind of leaves us, like if we really look at this definition, then it's sort of like we have clinical psychedelics, and then all the non-clinical ones are recreational, right? Question mark, I don't know, so let's explore together. Also, what I want to ask here, or kind of invite you to explore is, if we have on the one side the medical purposes, so maybe that is reactive mental health strategies, right? So what would pleasure then be? What would the opposite be? Are we talking about preventive mental health strategies? Maybe. Question mark. So now I think it's very useful to kind of like, when we will be speaking a lot about festivals today, right? Because this is kind of in a lot of times what people mean is this rave culture and also the area that I'm coming from. And I will be talking a lot more about this. But I do think it's also very interesting to kind of bring different concepts together and connect the dots. And if we look at what we know about psychedelics from the neuroscientific perspective, from the psychological perspective, we know, that for instance, the relaxed beliefs on the psychedelics model, the insights that we're having, and knowing that psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers. And then we think about having this experience, coming out of it. Where do we find ourselves? And how does it all come together? But the real question, kind of looking at all of this, is what are we recreating? What are we amplifying? And so we know in psychology sort of all experiences, which psychedelics are a part of that, right? Have a profound positive effect on mental health, on physical health. We know that connectedness is one of the aspects that is correlated to well-being. Also here, connectedness to yourself, to the others, and to the world. So also here, thinking about settings, how does it all come about? Emotional breakthrough, mystical experiences, social cure. So these are all different related aspects. And I just want to openly invite you to think about maybe your own theoretical understanding, or maybe also practical understanding, your own experiences. How does it all amplify what? And what can happen in which setting and what not? And what is maybe supported more so and what not? And so, speaking about settings again, I think it's very interesting that there is no unified sort of way of categorizing settings in academic literature. I hope to be able to look into it myself at some point in my career, but I do realize that it has a good reason for why it's like that. It is a very, very complex topic, right? So, what is a setting? And so, if we start looking at different papers, people sort of explore, music and which pictures on the walls, immediate settings, but also it is clear it's so much more. And so there are so many different dimensions to it. And what I was trying to picture here is the different dimensions, saying that the complexity is amplified because somehow it is all also super entangled with each other. And it's really hard to disentangle what the set means and brings into the setting, into the substance, and so on. And also it's super individual, right? So where does the ceremonial setting begin and the ritualistic start and end, and the wellness, celebration, recreation? So all of these things, they sort of merge, right? And so we can speak about immediate setting as in dance floor at a festival. But then in which state is the person is really determining also how they find themselves in this space. Who are they surrounded by? So there's a lot of kind of set related intentions, environment, all of that, but also contextual sort of dimensions, as in, is it a festival where maybe in a country where psychedelics are decriminalized? So automatically I'm having an experience that is not illegal, so I'm not doing anything wrong. Is it in my culture? So socio-geopolitical, so many different dimensions to that. And what makes it even more complex is that it's all relative. So it's not sort of a given, okay, this culture. It's sort of like, is it my culture? Is it a foreign culture? And so I really like this quote from Golden et al., saying basically that we know that setting can be have a positive effect, but under what conditions, when, for what indications, we really don't know. So it is a very interesting and rich topic to be exploring. And so, yeah, now I kind of want to pause that. So remember, we were framing recreational versus intentional, right? And so what is intention? And I think it's so interesting because, again, when we speak about intentional use, what most people say is sort of synonymous with some kind of purpose that in their cosmovision, in their conceptualization is the right way to do things, right? So intentionally, and a lot of times people mean really to heal, to become better, something like that. But actually, intentional means just on purpose. And which purpose that is, those can be so many things, right? And it's very interesting. So this is the second observation. I was telling you that this whole idea or the talk is based on two observations. The first one was that people speak sort of about kind of like belittling a little bit the experience, like I'm just doing this recreationally. But then second one is that speaking to people in the space, so like a lot of people who kind of are in the psychedelic space in different roles, they often, it's very interesting. I think it's super fascinating because on the one side, these experiences are so intense, they kind of expose us to this raw human experience where we understand how different the human experience can be, where we understand that there's many ways and many expressions, and we become potentially less judgmental. But then when we talk about use, we're like, well, but I only do it intentionally. So there is a judgment that is, there is one right way to do so, right? And so I think this is super interesting. And that's why, I'm exploring intentions right now. So in my dissertation, this is my topic. So what I'm looking at is which intention the person brings to the experience, how it connects to the experience itself, and how it connects to well-being, emotional breakthrough, all the different factors that we were also mentioning here. And so that's why all the claims I'm going to be making with caution, because obviously the data is not there yet. But I have been already thinking a lot about this topic, and I have been doing sort of pre-consultations with kind of experts from the field. So I've had a lot of discussions about intentions, and what I'm trying to bring into this talk is what I've understood so far. And what I've understood so far is that in this kind of formula that we use often, setting substance, intention is actually the core sort of thing, because it is set that is coming from the set. The entanglement is obvious, but then intention is going to choose which setting is happening at all and which substance is happening at all, right? So, and the idea is that if I were to put LSD in your water now, that is not an intentional use because you didn't plan on taking a psychedelic. But if you are somehow doing it on purpose, then it is intentional use without judgment. And so the intention can be more explicit or more implicit. So you can be more aware, less aware in your consciousness, why and what you're doing. So you might have given it more thought or less, but it will always be there, right? And so that's why I think it's a very important topic. And the way we sort of speak about it is just not really reflecting that in a lot of times. And so, another thing that I sort of already was able to produce in this work is to put together a so-called intentions menu. And so this is the basis for the questionnaire that I will be sending around when I have the ethics approval. And so I will show you this table in a second. There's a lot of text. That's why I'm preparing you. Don't be overwhelmed. So the table has two columns. And the left column is just sort of the category. So it's a very rough description, and it would be enough if you're going to go through it. And the right column is sort of giving you more details. So if you wanted to understand more what is kind of meant by that. And so I would ask you one thing, to familiarize yourself with it, just kind of to look over it. Because in a second, we're going to do our own little experiment here, which I will be asking you to do something. So first, I'm going to stop talking for a second. You just kind of go through it just to see where everything is, okay? So once you kind of looked through it. I would ask you to go to Mentimeter. Just on your phone. If you go to mentimeter.com, you can do our little voting session. And obviously, it would be very unethical of me to ask you for psychedelic experiences, so I'm not going to ask you that. I'm going to ask you about your experiences with the outer states of consciousness, quite generally, right? So it can be anything, non-substance, substance induced. So when you go to the mentimeter.com, and then if you go, should be showing the code up to 58121669. Is it working? Can you log in? 58121669.
Signal whatsoever in here.
Oh, but there's Wi-Fi, no?
Right.
In the meantime, people can enjoy my drawing skills.
Nice.
That was not in my primary school. That was recently. Like it's working. I can see number of people joining. Perfect. Just give you another. Or maybe if you manage to join, just give me a little nod so that I get a feeling of how many. Okay, good. So let's go to the next slide. So this is the question I was just promising you. Yeah. Can I? Wow. What are your top 3 intentions associated with non-ordinary states generally? So this is the list where we're just going through. I hope on your cell phone you can actually read it better than we can hear. Potentially. So pick top 3 of the intentions that you associate generally with when you are actively going into an altered state of consciousness, substance or non. Maybe again, little nod if you managed to already answer the question. Okay, another minute. Super interesting. Before my questionnaire, I get a chance of a little trial run. I love it. All right, so slowly it looks like we're having winners, which is fun, hedonism, silliness, and recreation. Valuable insights, including learning, unlearning, relearning, and new perspectives and problem solving. Healing, improving mental health. Do you find surprising or not surprising? Not yes for surprising, but not for not surprising. Okay. Okay. So the actual experiment begins now, though. This is the next question. What are your top 3 intentions associated with non-ordinary states at raves, parties, and festivals? So please answer one more time. Top 3. Now thinking specifically for sort of the classical, I guess, if you could call anything classical, rave, parties, festivals, as in definition of the recreational science.
So as in not our own intentions, but what we associate?
No, so the same question. Now, which ones are your top three explicitly for going into these states at raves, parties, festivals, at typical recreation? Okay, it looks like we have winners again, a clear winner again, but that is overlap, fun, hedonism, silliness, and recreation. I think this is so interesting because also, yeah, again, especially when we're speaking about this whole judgmental sort of the right intention and I'm not doing this and I'm doing that. This is, so to me, it resonates a lot, right? Because it's just human nature to sort of explore ourselves and alter these explorations. For that, but also very much not surprising to me, connection to others or communitas prominently present in experience enhancement. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. To you, surprising, not surprising? Yeah, okay. Can I have the presentation back? So we're going to take a break for Menti for a second, but we will be back at some point later on. Don't put your phones too far away. And all good. Technology. We're managing, especially science.
Moving.
No?
We just move this bar thing somehow. There
Oh,
we go.
there you go. Mhm. Can you put the mouse? Yeah. Okay, so this to sort of conclude this discussion of this bit is just that again, speaking about kind of settings and categorization. I don't have a solution yet. I have kind of showed you the complexities, but again, I'm hoping to be looking more into it in the future. And then, but whatever happens, I believe that intention needs to be in the core of categorization of the settings, just because to different people, the immediate environment means something completely different, right? So that's why, yeah, more to come on here. But now, actually, what I'm here to talk about is kind of my core topic that has been in my life, I guess, until now, is sort of psychedelics in the wild. So, meaning music festivals. Actually, I've been co-teaching this module on psychedelics in the wild for a certification program for medical professionals who are interested in psychedelics, and they have framed this module as psychedelics in the wild. And I think there is no better way to describe that because obviously that's going to be also very individual. So for some people, in the wild, maybe somewhere in the forest. I don't know. To me, this is that. So in the forest of human bodies, or just like in the sea and the cloud, whatever you want to call it, of the uncontrollability of everything happening at once, literally. This is to me wild, and what is happening, how it's happening. And so my previous research in psychedelics at music festival is something that I'm trying to coin as PEMF. And yeah, the idea is that it is a very important topic to look at just because of substance accessibility and cost, non-judgmental environment, so sort of like the place where it's normal to do this and to experiment, and the experience is invited, sort of. And experience availability plus the history, so kind of mankind having been gathering for ages, celebrating together, rites of passage, whatever that is, and their unapologetic existence. So what I'm trying to say is that quantitatively, if we look at psychedelic use in general across the world, And if we look at number of people who are having the profound experiences, and we compare those settings, the clinic is not going to be the leading one. So that's why we need to talk about these things. And again, we already touched upon how individually different it is being conceptualized. So this here, the ritual of dance, who recognizes what it is? Anyone?
Yeah, Shiva. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shiva.
Yeah, also. Okay, so this is the motto of this year's Boom Festival. I don't know who is going. Yay, see you there.
Yeah.
And I think it's super beautiful that they've kind of picked it, but it's also not surprising because it is not only kind of just people coming together. It is a ritual. It is a ceremony, right? So in more places, obviously more than others. And so, yeah, I can speak for another 5 hours about that. I'm not going to do this, but yeah, I don't want to bore you with the details of my sort of journey, but I do believe that few facts kind of just add to the credibility. Essentially, I lived at festivals for a year, and yeah, the project was named Glück. So basically, my best friend and I went to a festival every weekend for a year on 6 continents, and we were blogging about it. And this is how it all started. And yeah, a lot of things happened, and I would say basically everything that we've been kind of looking at, all experiences, emotional breakthroughs, connectedness, mystical experiences, communitas, everything that I was mentioning before, I've definitely experienced in various states throughout various events throughout the world. And so, yeah, that's why I became so fascinated in these events and how they bring people together and how they change people's lives, right? And yeah, I like to show this slide here in the UK, especially people can resonate, because I ultimately believe that a festival environment is that it's this utopia that is this temporary liminal space that is being created that under the right circumstances can be like a gateway into a completely new and different world. So I can compare it my journey with these festivals. It was sort of like always going on a journey from the track number 9, but then discovering psychedelics and discovering the platform 9¾ And so in my personal kind of experience, I guess, what I realized is that, you know, how actually we can see it a lot in our lives. Like, for instance, every yoga practice, right? So you go through different, you're going to start with a warm up and then you go through different asanas that are more like hardships. And ultimately you end up in shavasana, like practicing death. And it's like this little practice. So it's a cycle of entire life. And instead of, it has this quality of the pattern, right? So like the little kind of fractal of the bigger experience. And to me, festivals are that. They have this fractal quality to them of reoccurring cycles where you can now go into the experience with whatever, wherever you are and try things out. And then you come out and the next time, especially with like festivals that have a specific date, right? So it would be really, I'm having this experience over and over, like, wow, interesting. So you can really reflect, where was I at not the same, but similar constellation of events 1 year ago with my surroundings, with my mental state, and so on and so forth. So this is like the hero's journey, the fool's journey, whatever. It's kind of a reoccurring. It's very special. So I'm trying to say it's a very special constellation of events. And looking at sort of what they can teach you, obviously, as any psychedelic experience in any setting, you'll have, you know, the same cool stuff, neuroplasticity, and so on and so forth. But also here, I think there's a lot more that festivals kind of also bring as a potential, also like a potential to practice. And it has a lot to do with the community and being a part of something bigger. In a lot of times, I mean, Graham St. John has done so much work in kind of also comparing the ritual and the experience and how it can be sort of curated very meaningfully. So yeah, there is a lot going on, and that's why I did a study. So ultimately, it's not only what I kind of experienced or saw, but I was really curious about what actually other people say. And so we're just gonna run through a few slides from the results. I actually never did like a really fancy statistical analysis, which is upcoming, but this is more sort of on the top level. So it was a mixture of quantitative and qualitative, and as you can see here, we had a few people that had over 60 experiences or over 60 sort of bigger psychedelic experiences on a higher dosage at festivals. And then, almost the half of them had somewhere between 1 and 10. The substances that they have taken, you can see here very well, I think. Not surprisingly, MDMA and LSD, or maybe LSD, surprisingly, I don't know. Depends on where you're at. But those are sort of the top ones. But obviously, the big thing that is happening in these settings is mixed consumption. So essentially, 95.3% of people said they always use substances. Not surprising to me. I don't know what about you. But yeah, essentially, so these are the things that would take additionally, which sometimes are also psychedelics, but not necessarily. Obviously, there's alcohol, others, uppers, downers. Polydrug use. That's why this is important to kind of keep in mind, because we just introduced to the variety of the experience. Motivation. This is, I don't know if you ever feel like sometimes you think, I wish I knew back then what I know now. So if I would have had my wonderful intentions menu back then, I would have asked people, but that was not the case. But I think the results are not surprising, no? So we today have fun, enhancement, and connection. So you can sort of find, so we're validating the findings here. So we, in this room, have found sort of similar things that we're going for. In the interview, so in the qualitative part, I picked up on these themes that, are, I think, quite extraordinary in comparison to other settings and worth mentioning. One of them being, because a lot of times when we speak about recreational settings, it's sort of like, for some people that, that's not really a part of their reality. Like, why in the world would somebody do that? It's such a chaotic, uncontrollable, whatever place. And then I found it interesting, and some participants said this is actually the reason why they do it, because it's sort of like a level of playing a game and sort of like trying to maybe navigate these states in certain environments in one way, but then putting whatever you learned into practice, going out there and seeing in the real life world where it is accepted, right? Because it is not just like somewhere in the street or in the supermarket. It is a place where it's generally understood and accepted that this is what is happening. And so, basically they said this is the reason why they would do it in the first place. But then obviously diversity and richness of the surroundings. And I think here, intentionality as in, so many people come together and they build whatever they build. And a lot of times it's such a beautiful, collection of art and just whatever the best that people have to offer. And it just kind of amplifies, right, everything. Pharmacological differences in terms of, again, the accessibility. So you don't really have to pay thousands of pounds for a retreat. Just go buy an acetate from your neighbor for 15 pounds. Quite a different story. And also, I think somebody from my participants said that it's sort of like an alchemical thing. So it is accepted that this polydrug use is sort of exploration, right? So what happens if I take a pinch of this and then add a pinch of that? So there's like this, acceptance around that too going. And then obviously community and connection aspect. We need to speak more about that. It's very clear. So I was wondering which kind of experiences do people have actually? And without wanting to make it too complicated, I've kind of taken challenging, enjoyable, and mystical ones. Also kind of looking at, because there's a lot of, again, judgment and sort of opinions about mystical experiences being reserved to for certain maybe settings or situations. But it came out that surprisingly, so this is this chart here, surprisingly, a lot of mystical experiences are happening at festivals. But obviously the majority, so here, it's a lot of numbers. The greener, the more basically. So you can see enjoyable are the majority, which is not surprising, I guess. That's why we all do it. But there's also quite a few challenging ones. Yeah, this is where the psychic comes in. It's a different story. Talk about in a second. But yeah, so looking at maybe a few details of what does it mean enjoyable. I like this chart. So it's like over 50% of people kind of, yeah, experience all of these things that, state of bliss and connection and ecstasy and laughter. And yeah, I think it's just in our world, maybe this is really an antidote to many things and sort of, yeah, speaking what remember at the beginning we were speaking about maybe preventative mental health. So I do personally see and believe that that plays a big role in it. Challenging, also here you can see kind of reflected. So only anxiety was mentioned over 50%, which is obviously, yeah, anxiety and paranoia can also be very much substance induced. But there were also people saying basically that they have reduced social anxiety. So it's not really white or black, right? It has multiple dimensions. Mystical experiences, so this is kind of like the classical categorization from the mystical experience questionnaire. External unity, transcendence of time and space, ineffability, internal unity, and noetic quality. Those are all the ones over 50% that people were mentioning that they were having. And worldview and behavior changes. And I think now we're coming kind of to the heart and the centerpiece of this study. And so people were saying 89% of people said yes, that these experiences would have worldview and behavior changes and implications on them. And the main ones kind of evolved around heightened empathy, non-judgmental behavior towards others, mindfulness, self-awareness, all the good stuff. Now I want to link this back to the question or to the beginning. So when we're speaking about, I only do this recreationally, right? And then you look at what really happens. I think that's why we sort of need to be mindful of how we actually use the description of how we conceptualize, how we sort of speak about also with others about what is happening. And here are some quotes. Let's just read it out. So I came away from it with all the healing, all the love, just kind of remembered my space in the world. And it was good to be alive, honestly, and good to keep going. I came back just able to do everything, more motivated, happier. I was able to socialize more and to communicate more. This is a longer one, but I've highlighted kind of the main areas that is also interesting to see. So basically the person is saying, very beneficial to my mental health, yes. And then mentions that it's really hard to disentangle because again, here comes in the complexity, right? So what is the environment? What are the people? So incredible communities, so communitas, always a big part of it. And then I'm basically inviting more neuroplasticity during psychedelic experience, inviting the environment of shaping me more. So we see, yes, the person is aware sort of the neurobiological underpinnings, but also inviting, that is also intention, right? And opening up yourself to be positive. And Yeah. So this is the yeah. So basically, that's on sort of content side. But I also promised to speak about risk and success factors a little bit, and I think to kind of go through risk and success factors, the easiest way would be to answer two questions, and those are maybe useful, or your personal experiences with altered states generally at some point. And so the first question is how to survive, and the second one is how to thrive. So if you go to Mentimeter now, let's hear from you. I mean, obviously, if you feel just like speaking, do that. But if you would like to stay sort of more, you know, you're welcome to just write it in. So what are your tips on how to here? Yeah, so down here, there was the next slide. So let's say what you say before we go back to the presentation. How to survive? What would be out of your own experience? The tips. What are the risk and success factors? How do you need to consider them to survive in a kind of strong psychedelic experience at a music festival or a strong altered state of consciousness? Everybody should. Okay. Not necessarily just whatever comes to your mind. Be connected to others people. Trust the process. Yeah. I'm not sure if multiple people said trust, and that's why Menti is putting it like beautifully in the middle of this whole thing. Or is it a coincidence? Whichever way, it does seem to be true, right? Like experience speaking out of someone right there.
Survive is the best. The best. Lose your face.
I've asked sort of a similar question in my study, so we'll look at the results in a second. But for now, what you are saying seems to be evolving around trust, obviously, a lot about community, right? So being open and connecting to others. So this is the notion of who you're surrounded by and where, because ultimately, where are you landing and how are you landing? Is going to be amplified and processed with help of the primarily people that you're surrounded with. Grounding, self-awareness, mindfulness, yeah. All right, let's take a look back into the presentation for what sort of the participants said. And I had this interesting experience. I was just looking at the answers back then, and essentially I realized, although it was an open question, they all sort of evolved around the same topics, and maybe that's not surprising. And a lot of that is obviously what you just put on the screen there. And it was very easy for me to neatly separate them in our favorite setting, substance, formula, and others. But yeah, basically, you can see the percentage is also represented by the size of the bubble. And so you were just saying about the people, and this is with whom over 50% of the people say that. Be surrounded by people you trust, essentially. Obviously, everybody's got their own conceptualization. Thus, it it have to be a sober friend? Does it have to be a guide? Does it have to be somebody experienced with such things, or just friend? This can vary, right? But everybody agrees this is sort of the most important. The second most important thing is dosage. I feel like there's a lot of experience also speaking out of people, basically, and that has something to do with, again, there's no right and wrong, right? But people do, so the challenging experiences we're looking at, people tended to find themselves in these situations when sort of when taken more than they were somehow expecting, maybe overestimating their own sort of limits, and or maybe actively seeking out to find the limits, right? Where so yeah, I guess especially at festivals, it's never kind of one thing, right? So it's such a long time, and I don't know, especially if you're like, if LSD is involved in like 12 to 18 hours of chapters and chapters of happenings. So yeah, obviously a good idea on the peak to be somewhere where you feel more safe and don't have to navigate all the complexities at once. And then sort of when you're past the peak, venture out and connect with the world around you. But yeah, you can see, so a lot of obviously embracing the experiences, trust what we just said as well, self-care, basic needs coverage, and so on. So a lot of survival tips are sort of in the moment, how to deal with the situation. Now, the last question is how to thrive. What do you think? So if we go back to Menti. The same difference, same question, as in, for such experiences to be really successful in whatever you define as successful, whatever is success to you in this context. What are your tips? How to thrive? Like eat. So eat is not about survival, it's the thriving aspect. Okay. Interesting. Feel the music, acceptance, embrace it, pay attention. Chai, yeah, I agree. Intentionality. Know your intention, how the right intention. Okay. So a lot again about beyond, right? So kind of intentionality sweeps over from the immediate moment into before the experience. Pair socks are important for all the strategies of these. All right, interesting. So a lot of that, to me, from what you're saying, they're all super valuable tips as well. I don't know so I would suggest, let's go back to the presentation, to make a bit of a differentiation, because a lot of that is also sort of in the moment and can be done there, right? But I also do believe that during the experience, there's a lot about survival, but also thriving with chai, of course. But if we think, and this is what I found in the study, that for instance, if you sort of ask people about liberation or integration, so if you ask about things that come before and after, that was specifically for recreational settings, there seems to be less attention. I would suggest that if we give more attention to these phases, this is what is going to help us thrive during the experience. Because preparation, so what people were saying is essentially more like logistical stuff, right? So figure out where everything is, make a strategy for substances, speak to your friends, whatever. But then again, so what you were saying, intentionality, right? But then also a part of it is all the mindfulness practices, whatever helps you, whatever practices you have that are going to prepare you and keep you safe and give you the opportunity to ground when things get overwhelming. So essentially preparation for the chaos in the best, so that you can engage with the chaos in the best possible way. So I would suggest here preparation, cultivating all of these practices, but also integration. So literally, and a lot of times we speak about integration after ceremony, after, these experiences that are kind of like more in other settings. But then the experience that I've made was that I talk to people about it and they're like, actually, that is a good idea. And so I would suggest to include that as well. And it is very easy, sort of, after a festival to have, and a lot of times you'll have DJ sets to listen and come back to and connect. So it's always about remembering, expressing, and reconnecting, ultimately making the tangible changes in your life from what you've learned during this experience. That's it. Good. Finally, I'll let you decide and answer the question that is the main topic of the talk for yourself. Is it really recreational versus intentional psychedelic substance use or not? References, in case you're interested. That's it.